It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner, Ian Rivers, the co-host on this podcast. Ian, always a great day to be a Beaver, but not so much for the Bemidji State football team. We'll get to that, along with a big win for men's hockey. Women's hockey goes on the road this weekend, and we clean you up on the other spots across Beaver territory. But first, Ian, we're going to talk football. And before we get into that, we do have a special interview coming up later in the week, so be on the lookout for that. And we're going to talk a little football in that, so keep an eye out for that podcast coming up later this week, right, Ian?
Yeah, not going to go super in-depth on football. We, I guess, didn't go super in-depth on that episode.
We didn't spend the whole length of the podcast talking about it, but we do go a little in-depth.
Yeah, and honestly, this isn't necessarily a game that we want to go super in-depth on, because it is a little bit of a disappointing loss, and I don't think that anybody's going to care too much when you say that, because they know it too. So let's just jump right into it. Pretty disappointing loss against Northern State this weekend, CJ. 14-13 loss. The offense really just wasn't clicking on all cylinders in this game. Probably the worst performance they had since that Michigan Tech game to open the season, at least for the first 3.5 quarters, until the offense finally got rearing and ended up stealing that game back from the Huskies. This was just a kind of a shock result, given the fact that Northern State, now this is their second win in a row. I believe they did did Winona beat them the week before? I can't remember, but yeah, their second win now in the season. Just a game that you thought you were going to be able to take care of and be able to just, win it with a little bit more relative ease than they did. It came down to a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. We don't fault Bolte for going for it at all. That's what he's done historically. We were expecting that to happen had they scored the touchdown to come within one. So, the defense did their job for the most part, got them in some good positions to score. And like we talked about, they just couldn't capitalize on some of those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to get caught up on the PAT and not going for two. And I get it. Like, if you're not thinking about it, you're like, we just tied the game. Let's kick it. Let's go to overtime. Let's see what happens. And there's a sense of, if we kick it, we're still alive, and we don't know what's behind door number 2. And that could be anything. We could lose the game in overtime. We could win the game in overtime, but it just gives a little bit longer of the game. Whereas, again, and you'll see this in NFL and other college football circles, if you have a chance to win the game right there, just do it. Because, and now Bolte's always done it this way, and we'll talk about that in a second, but just the game theory, generally speaking, for the average football fan and just where the game of football is headed in terms of late game decision-making. Heck, I know the Ravens had the touchdown get taken away in week 1 off of the toe in the end zone and whatever, but they were going to go for 2 for the win, because they were on the road like Bemidji State was. They had a touchdown late. Do you go to overtime, or do you say, hey, we had the ball on the 2. We're on the 2-yard line. We need to get into the end zone. We need 2 yards, 1 play. The Bemidji State offense just was not having a good day at the office on Saturday. So instead of trusting them on the 25-yard line, I believe that's where they start in overtime, and trying to get into the end zone, we have it at the 2. Let's just get this play. Now, unfortunately, the Bemidji State offensive line just lost that rep, and that sounds super simple, but the D lineman made a good move, won the rep, got pressure immediately in McGath, and he wasn't able to get it. And there was a play to be made there, Ian. The play was there. The defensive line just beat it, and you lose. But I don't think I fault Bolte for going for it. And I think we're both pretty much in agreement on that, because Bolte's done this forever. But other than that, you just have a chance to win it. It's right there. You get 1 play. You're on the 2-yard line. You don't have to go on another drive. You don't keep the ball out of Northern's hands. You have them already on their heels. They're already you just have everything in your favor to go for 2, and they didn't get it, and that's fine. But I don't think we fault the process. And I think this is just and it's hard in football because there's so little opportunities just because of the nature of the sport. But it's tough to separate results from outcome, or a process from results rather. And that's one where the process was good, the result wasn't. And there's just nothing you can do about that, really, because there's no guarantee if they get into overtime that Bemidji State would win that game. And you just had an opportunity to finish it there. So that's the one thing. And the other thing, Ian, we've talked about this all the time. Bolte is not a guy who will just kick for the PAT. And he's just got a big history of that, of just saying, we have it, let's go for the win. Homecoming 2018 against Sioux Falls. They go for 2. They win the game. Everybody loves it. They've been aggressive all the time. And this isn't even like an over aggressiveness. This isn't playing with fire. This is a calculated aggressive move that just didn't pan out. And there's a reason why they go for 2 all the time. And we kind of joke about it. We don't have anything to prove, Ian, but the Moorhead 2016 game always, I feel like, sticks in my head.
Yeah, that's the number one thing that kind of makes me believe. Just a couple of years ago, too, when we started covering this team, a game against Augustana, they lost the game because they had a huge comeback, and then they tried to and I think that's the most beautiful thing. I think in college football especially, it's overwhelmingly true, is like there's a saying, when you are a David, at some point you've got to take the shot and try to kill Goliath, right? If you're in a close game with you're the underdog, you've got to just go for the win. Don't rely on overtime. Just try to win it right then and there. And maybe you lose the game on the 2-point conversion. I don't think that was the case in this particular game. I think Bemidji State was the Goliath in this instance, but most of the time I think that still reigns true. I think it was just unfortunate. Something that we also didn't bring up is that they didn't have a timeout left. So the play call kind of came in late. They only had like 10 seconds left, maybe less by the time they actually got to the line of scrimmage.
Miscommunication at the line.
Yeah, and so they kind of just had to snap the ball, and really it didn't give them a great opportunity to get set and to get a good play in there. And I'm sure they already had it in the back of their mind. They knew what they were going to do. But at the end of the day, it seemed like from the jump, it was always going to be a long shot on that play. Yeah, there might have been a play to be made there, but the protection kind of broke down a little bit earlier than you'd like, and it didn't work out. And like we talked about, this team is 2 weird plays away from being undefeated. If a field goal goes a little bit of a different direction and, 2-point conversion gets converted, this team is 6-0, and we're talking about them in a lot different light. But they got a bye week here coming up. And then, big picture, this is definitely something that the conference is wide open this year. And that's, I think, what we said made it especially a frustrating loss. Is just like the way that the conference shook out this week. Mankato dropped their first game of the season. Moorhead dropped another game. That's a team you think might be up there. Like Duluth lost again. Minot, who's up there, lost yet again. So it's like, this was a week that you would have been happy to come away with a win. You'd probably be tied for first in the conference as it stands, but it didn't happen, and they got to regroup, and they pretty much have to play perfect now coming down the stretch, probably to get a playoff berth. I don't know how the rest of the central region is shaking up, but it doesn't look good for a 2-loss team when 2 losses have been pretty much the bare minimum to get yourself into that playoff spot. But that maybe is a conversation for another week as we come a little closer to the end of the season each week here. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, like, they got to play perfect. And we talked about how when they beat USF, it's like, this is perfect because you couldn't afford a loss against USF, because then you would have had to play perfect the rest of the season. Well, it got them through UMary where they won, and then they played Northern and lost that game. There's 5 games left on the schedule, and it's tough. I mean, luckily you're playing Wayne and Augustana at home, but those still are not easy tasks. You have to go to Winona, and Winona is capable of beating anybody. And MSU Moorhead is the most volatile team I've seen in years. So like this is not an easy slate down the stretch. And the fact that you now have to play perfect, barring some kind of other thing, is going to be huge, especially because if you lose to a Wayne State or an Augustana, a team that is competing at the top of the conference, they have that game in hand. And like you talked about, Ian, it's tough in that region. Something could change, and maybe the NSIC, they've gotten 3 teams in before, more, but this year maybe it isn't, just with the way these other schools in the central region are shaping up. We'll have to see. But yeah, just a very, very unfortunate situation. I think the defense, by the way, played great. I know, you can maybe say, oh, they gave up a score late. They gave it this, they gave it that. You gave up, 14 points in a game. They did their part. And outside of just a scoring drive, I mean, like you should expect your offense to get a little bit more. They just were not in sync. They were not in rhythm. It was a windy day, like, and playing in the Dakotas is never easy. 30-mile-an-hour winds. It affected the kicking game. Bemidji State's offense didn't quite get going, but right before the half, McGath escaped pressure, made a beautiful throw down the sideline. Peters made a great catch, and you thought, okay, this is it. Now they're in business. They got into field goal range. They didn't quite get into the end zone, but they kicked a manageable, can't remember what the yardage was specifically, but felt like in the 30-ish range, and they missed it. And it's windy, so, I'm not going to rip the kicker in that situation, but, it's windy. You got tough conditions. And though that would have been 3 big points out of halftime because Bemidji State got the ball to start the second half, I believe, and went right down the field for a touchdown to get the second half going. So that would have been huge, a huge 3 points that could have swung momentum and would have won him the game. And you can look at stuff here or there, but this is just one where, they've been playing with fire for a little bit. They've had some close games, and this time it catches up with you. You're not going to be the 2022 Minnesota Vikings go undefeated in 1-score games or whatever the heck the record is. When you typically play 1-score games, most teams are around 500 in those situations, because when you're in 1-score games, they're typically a coin flip. And on this one, it was a coin flip on the fact of the PAT, and you lost that one. And I think if you do that play another 9 times, that's probably the one time that D lineman beats that rep. But in this reality, that's the one where he got it and they lost. So it's tough. And Ian, I know you teased a little bit already, but before we get into some other Bemidji State sports, there is the bye week coming up, so we don't have a game to preview. But for now, let's go around the NSIC.
Yeah, let me just pull that up quick. I think I closed out of the schedule tab, but yeah, it was a weird week in the NSIC, and as I said, I think over the last couple of weeks, this conference is starting to cannibalize itself a little bit. Nobody is really pulling away with the lead. I mean, Mankato still sits up there because of Bemidji State's loss as the lone team. But yeah, Nebraska-Kearney took on Southwest Minnesota State, an out-of-conference game. They won 35-0 in Marshall over the Mustangs. Minnesota-Duluth and Augustana played in Sioux Falls this weekend. Augustana won that game 28-24. Wayne State College beat Minot State 27-21. The Beavers are a feisty team, regardless of the result of that game being the loss. Winona State, maybe the biggest shock of the weekend. Winona State 33, Moorhead 6. I know that Moorhead is a very volatile team, but it's crazy, man. They've beat some really good teams, and they've lost. I mean, what are they on the season? 2-3 now, or 3-3? Like, they're just bang average, and it's either the best win you've ever seen or one of the worst losses that you've ever felt. So Concordia St. Paul beat UMary in double overtime in Bismarck, 19-13. Sioux Falls 40-36 over Minnesota State. Minnesota State drops a game, and the Beavers cannot capitalize by winning their own game, as Northern State takes down the Beavers, of course, 14-13. That is your Around the NSIC segment. Standings page, I mean, it is a logjam. Other than UMary and Southwest, who are down at the bottom of the conference, there is, only one team. So there's 15 teams in our great conference. 3 of them don't have 2 or 3 wins in the conference. You're looking at 3-1, 3-1, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 2-2, 2-2, 2-2, 2-2, 2-3. That's the standings from 2 through 13. So it is a log jam right now. There's no title game. There's no, tournament in this. So there's nothing really to play for other than first place. And then, if you're a rebuilding program, maybe you just want to see yourself improve every year. But I mean, in the top 5 in this conference, you tell me, man, because it's been nuts this year. I mean, Moorhead, like I said, they're 2-3 overall. They're 2-2. They've beaten some of the best teams in this conference, but they're sitting in like a tie for 9th place right now. It's absurd what this conference is doing to itself, and I think it is going to affect what happens in the postseason. Some of these other conferences, their top teams are beating up on, they're bad opponents at the bottom of their conference, but as long as they're beating those opponents, they're going to have a better resume than some of these teams. Like, maybe BSU has a decent resume because, let's see, we've beaten Sioux Falls, who isn't bad. We've beaten, maybe Minot, who isn't bad. We beat maybe Wayne State, but we lose to Augustana and Mankato, and then we have a terrible loss in there against a Northern State team. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough if we do not win out to make the playoffs, and that could be said about almost any team in this conference. So we'll see how it shakes out, but yeah, it's a logjam, and it's going to be fun at the very least to cover this conference and see who can, come out on top at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch this down the stretch. It's a razor's edge, and it's, again, dropping that game to Northern was so huge because even though Mankato would have the tiebreaker, you now are on level playing field where if they slip up one more time and you stay perfect or whatever, you can be right there with them. And just a missed opportunity. And hopefully this motivates the boys and they can, kind of rally around it. They have a bye week to sit on it, which maybe isn't the best thing because, that quick turnaround allows you to kind of rally behind it. Now they have a chance to, it kind of gets flushed a little bit. So I don't know how much it'll motivate them, but that specifically, like the juice from that motivation will probably wear off by the time that they play Minot. But beside the point, let's move on to some other sports here, Ian. And on-air production meeting here, I think for our player of the week kind of nod here on the women's side of things, I think we probably lean towards women's soccer, right? We probably lean a little towards Barthelt.
I think it's got to be Katrina Barthelt, man. She had another great weekend. She had a goal in each game against Winona State and another one against SMSU. And I thought I could have sworn that she got an assist on one of those goals as well. But yeah, either way, at least on the Beavers webpage, it's not saying that she did. But yeah, 2 goals on the weekend for Katrina Barthelt. She has now 7 on the season, and that is through, I can't remember how many games they've totally played. That would be 9. They're 6-3 overall. So 7 goals in 9 games. That's a pretty good tally for a soccer team or for a soccer player individually. So yeah, if you continue that pace, the Beavers offense is going to be pretty good come the end of the season. So that's good. And if you want to look more from a team perspective, after awarding Katrina with Women's Player of the Week, we can look at a 3-0 win over Winona State on Friday. That was Katrina Barthelt, Lauren Hodney, and Emma Holsnitz with the goals on Friday. And Ella Wade with the assist on Holsnitz's goal. Katrina Barthelt assisted by Maggie Kramer on Sunday, and then Grace Kittle getting her first and assisted by Madison Fertel and Emma Holsnitz, and then Mallory Madarek adding a goal late in that game. So the Beavers won 2-1 over SMSU, a sweep on the weekend for the Beaver soccer team, and a really, really good one because that rockets them up into second place in the conference. Minnesota State in the conference, still unbeaten. They're 5-0-1. So they have 16 points. The Beavers sit in second place at 4-1 with 12 points. But St. Cloud State now with a loss and 2 draws. I don't know who they played this last weekend, but St. Cloud State slipping up a little bit. Minnesota State at the top right now, but Beavers are going to get a crack at them later this season. So we'll see if they can continue this trend. They have a slate this weekend. They have a chance of some revenge against Northern State and Aberdeen on Friday, and then they travel north into MSU Moorhead to play the Dragons. So these are 2 games where, again, you want to see this game against Northern State is going to be a little bit tougher, but you want to see what this team can do against a better opponent. These 2 teams that we played this weekend and even Sioux Falls last weekend, not very talented, at least in terms of where they're at in the standings. SMSU currently 1-7-1 on the season. Sioux Falls was 1-8, and then I'm blanking. Winona State 3-4-1, so not quite as bad. But you want to see what you can do against the best of the best. Northern State right now currently sitting in a 3-way tie with St. Cloud State and Wayne State for third place, just 1 point behind the Beavers. So a little bit early in the season to start talking playoffs quite yet. But of course, when you only play each of these teams in the conference one time, every game counts for that a little bit more. We talked about that with Augustana for men's hockey coming up later this season when conference play gets started in men's hockey. That'll be bigger. That's the same with women's soccer. You lose a game to Winona State early in the season, it's going to come back to bite you. So we'll see how much of a run this team can get on. Yeah, Northern State's going to be the toughest team here in recent, games that they're going to have to play. But I was impressed with the win, with the sweep this weekend. Last season, sorry. They kind of stumbled in the regular season a bit. It took them a little bit of time they had to pull off some heroics there to let alone make the tournament, but to get a home game in the playoffs last season. Then it took them some heroics to get to the semifinals and to get to the final. And so they made a great run last season, but I was hoping this season that we could see them get back on top of the conference. And so far through just 5 conference games, they've been 4-1. And that's more of what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, you're seeing the defense that Bemidji State soccer is known for, and then when you're able to see that offense kick into gear this weekend, it's just very promising. And they stumbled a little bit out of the gate and it took a couple weeks to find their footing, but really since they've gotten into conference play, they've hit their stride, and outside of the loss to St. Cloud State, this team has really hummed along through most of NSIC play, so it'll be exciting to see how that continues here in the coming weeks. Ian, let's pivot to
Moorhead, by the way, 8-1 on the season. So that should be, I know we shouldn't be saying this after the football team just dropped a game to Northern State, but it should be 3 points at least this weekend, even on the road.
Ideally, this
at least.
Ideally, it's a good opportunity for them to get some more points here in the conference and get themselves into good shape for that. Switching gears here, and let's move over to volleyball for Bemidji State. The team seeking still their first NSIC win of the season. As we talked about, Ian, this is just a tough conference in volleyball, one of the best in the country. And after starting off with a 5-set loss to Minnesota-Duluth and then getting swept in 3 against St. Cloud State over homecoming week, they had a couple more games over the weekend on Friday and Saturday. They lost to Augustana in 5, and then they played number 6 Wayne State and lost in 3. And just, you ran into a good team in Wayne. You couldn't quite pull it out against Augustana. And I think that Augustana one maybe feels like the missed opportunity in the bunch, but, just keeping on and hoping they can kind of find a stretch to get hot in the middle of the season. They're currently 5-7 overall. And it's tough to tell because if you just look at the losses, you think, oh, they're playing horrible right now. They're doing whatever. This is a tough volleyball conference. So even if they are not playing bad, you got to be on your best every single night in the NSIC for volleyball.
Yeah, it's a little bit like WCHA hockey on the women's side, of course, right? Like it's just, there's really no off weekends, especially now that St. Thomas is no longer in their first season and they're playing a little bit better hockey on that side too. So it's a difficult conference to play in. This weekend, you have a little bit better chance. I think you have, I can't remember who the second game was
this weekend.
Falls.
Yeah.
Actually, they play tomorrow night against MSU Moorhead, October 8th, Tuesday against Moorhead. That's a strange time for a game.
So the people who are listening to this will have already known what the result is.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully they can come out with a win against Moorhead. They're not quite as high in the standings. They're right around where Bemidji is, 6-6 and 1-3 in the NSIC. So kind of around that Bemidji area in terms of winnable games. We could be looking at this one as a potential winnable game for the Beavers. And then even Sioux Falls, 9-5 overall, 4-2 in the conference, of course. A little bit better than what Bemidji's been, but hey, if you're going to make any chance at a run, those are kind of games that you got to win is against teams they're going to be up there at the top of the conference standings, but we'll see how it goes. It's a hard thing to navigate right now, especially with everything that the volleyball team has been through this season. So we're not going to judge them too much based off of wins and losses this season. Just going out there and putting up a couple of good games against Minnesota-Duluth so far in Augustana. It's a bummer that they couldn't get those to go the different way because, you'd be sitting at 7-5 and 2-2 in the conference and you feel really, really good right now. But it just hasn't quite come to fruition yet.
Yeah, it's work in progress, and obviously a lot going on this season. So just kind of roll with the punches, and we'll see what happens here over the next week. All right, moving on. I think we want to end the show talking a little hockey, and we'll start off, Ian, I think with men's hockey because what a game. What a game. Bemidji State goes on the road into UMD. Amsoil, not an easy place to play at all. Opening weekend of the season, a lot of juice on both sides. And Bemidji State that game felt like an eternity just with everything that happened, but able to win in overtime, You get 4 goals for your offense. And not only that, you lose Matthias Scholl late in that game. And after giving up an initial goal, you have your backup goaltender come in and stand on his head against a ranked team on the road, just getting thrown in there, and plays well enough to allow Bemidji State to win in overtime. Ian, just what was that emotional roller coaster like for you watching that game?
Well, I didn't watch the game. That's part of the issue here that we're going to have discussing this. But I did watch the highlights, and I do have everything.
NCHC rules,
yeah, NCHC, and I wouldn't have been in a position to really watch it either. So, like, I just didn't even try to go and pay for a subscription for a month to that because I, like I said, I don't know how much of it I would have been able to see anyways, even if I had. So, unfortunately, but I mean, fortunately, it was a game that, if I can't pay for an extra subscription, oh no, sorry. Yeah, it was a good game. It would have been one that I would have liked to watch because, 4-3 win over Duluth. That's a ranked team, at least in the preseason polls, which of course we don't take much stock in. But yeah, it's always good to win non-conference games, especially when they are ranked. That's going to be a good win coming down the home stretch here, or if not here, but eventually when we do come down the home stretch, I think this will be a game that we look back on and say, yeah, that was awesome to be able to win that game in non-conference, when in years past, the Minnesota teams outside of conference have really given us quite a bit of trouble. Carter Ranclev, the brand new man, got us started with a goal early in this game, just a minute 41 in, scoring.
Stand up.
Yep, Moorhead Spud, the transfer from Niagara University. He was assisted by Austin Jopi and another newcomer, Riley Funk. So that was a good way to start the game. And then at the end of the period, I want to be so happy about this win, but man, again, they're doing stuff that's a little bit concerning still. Giving up a goal with 2 seconds left in the first period to Jason Shagabe, assisted by the Plant brothers, Max and Zam. That's frustrating. That's something you can't do when you're trying to compete for, another championship. So it's game one. You're not going to get too hell-bent about it, but not the stuff we like to see. Dante Lawson adds the second goal in the second period, assisted by who else? Reese Chiddington and Jake McLean. That line, again, producing. I think it was a shot from Chiddington that just rebounded off the pads of the goalie, and Dante was there on kind of a 7-1 or maybe a 2-1-0. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but Dante was able to tuck it away. Shagabe added a power play goal, his second tally of the game in the second period. And then Yuri Väisänen, a really, really nice move. A lot of speed coming at the net, and he tucked it in for a 3-2 lead. And then the dreaded end of 2 minutes, or last 2 minutes in the game came, and BSU a tying goal. They did end up winning in overtime, but of course, with the pairwise rules, this doesn't count as a full win. Granted, it was on the road, so that will help counter that and make it better. But man, it's just like, oh, if you wouldn't have given up that goal with under 2 minutes left, and the confusing thing is, Rathan, congratulations to him, by the way, coming in for Matthias Scholl, who got a little bit injured, making a fantastic save. Third period, I believe, or maybe it was late in the second. I think it was in the third period.
I think it was the third. It was the third.
Yeah, it was. Confused because BSU tweeted out something like he made 11 of 11 saves en route to his first win, and I'm like, how is that possible? Because they gave up a goal. And I was told by Lucas, don't worry about it. And I assumed then don't worry about it. Something just completely horrendous happened, and it would just be the most embarrassing thing I ever saw. And I watched the highlights, and I'm like, I don't get it. How did this count, or how did it not count against him? Maybe it got deflected off of somebody's skate weird, but it, I guess, didn't count as a shot. I have no clue what happened with that. But either way, it went to overtime, and they win. It's, oh, captain, my captain. It's the, dare I say, CJ, the men's BSU Beaver Banter Player of the Week. We'll give it to Jackson Jutting, the overtime game winner. Similar, a little, it's not the same play, but similar to the fact that he won an overtime game against St. Thomas last year. I think was the last overtime game we were a part of. So, yeah, No, actually, no. It was the Ferris State playoff game. Eric
Oh yeah,
Polkamp.
yeah, yep.
Technically, that was last regular season.
First
I
season.
finished CJ last regular season overtime game. Yeah, definitely was going to add that in there. But yeah, Jackson Jutting, just great work along the boards. It looked like, and unassisted because it kind of came off of a
Just
back
did a good
check,
job
I
kind
guess
of
I want to say. But yeah,
right.
a win is a win.
Into offense and get that. Was able to put the puck in the net.
A road overtime win against Minnesota-Duluth feels a lot better in the first weekend than a home overtime win against Army. No disrespect to those who've served, but your hockey
especially
team
coming off an overtime loss the night before against Wisconsin.
Exactly, against Wisconsin, who at the time we didn't know would be like a tournament level team in the first year under Mike Hastings. So that loss was a little bit more disappointing when they're coming off of a terrible year the year before, and we're like, we just gave up 63 shots to Wisconsin. What are we doing to your defense? But
to be fair, they brought like half the Mankato team over there. So
that's true. Yeah. But a good win. I'm very happy about it. And you got St. Cloud State this next week, who just got obliterated by Minnesota in an exhibition. So I don't know how much you want to hang on that. Usually not much, but they did win their first game of the season in Mendota Heights. They played the Tommies in one game. They've won 1-0 in that game against the Tommies. So I really don't know what to expect out of St. Cloud State. I think it's the same thing kind of with Minnesota-Duluth. And I don't want to jump into this yet if you still have more to say about the Duluth game. But I think that this is another – I'm kind of hoping for a split. I'm hoping that they win. Weirdly enough, I hope that they win the game in St. Cloud because I just bought tickets for that game today. So I will be there with some family members on the glass again, as I was 2 years ago in that very stadium, the Herb Brooks Center there in St. Cloud. So I'll be at the St. Cloud State game on Friday night, and then they go to Bemidji on Saturday. So yes, if you have anything more to say about the Duluth game, please go ahead and do that, CJ. I didn't mean to jump forward before you had the chance.
Well, just so you know, Friday's game is in St. Cloud, where Saturday is in Bemidji.
Oh, did I say it backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At least that's what the schedule says. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Friday night. I bought the tickets for Friday night. So
Friday. I was going to say, I was like, you better not go there on Saturday to St. Cloud. You're going to be very disappointed.
Where is everybody?
Because Friday's game is going to be on Fox 9 Plus.
Fox 9 Plus. Yep.
So it will be televised, which is going to be fun to see. I'm going to be calling a football game that night, so I will not get to watch it, but I will be eager to watch the replay to get to see my favorite college hockey team get to be on TV. So that's always fun. And then, of course, you can watch on Midcoast Sports Plus for Saturday's game. My son is getting baptized on Saturday, so I will hopefully be able to watch by the time that starts, but I can't go to Bemidji. Otherwise, that might have been one. The St. Cloud State series is always fun because I live right in between Bemidji and St. Cloud State. So it's like just a little over an hour and a half either way. And it'd be one where it's like, oh, cool, go to Bemidji one day, go to St. Cloud the next, and kind of do that. But maybe for another year. This is a fun rivalry to play. Obviously, Coach Saratori has some connections to St. Cloud State, and the programs play each other a lot. And the last time, did they play each other last season, Ian, or am I thinking of 2 years ago when Bemidji State split with them?
Yes, they did. Yeah, two years ago they split with them. I've been repressing last season's results against St. Cloud State. I believe it was
that's
a
right.
pair of 6-1 losses.
We don't talk about the non-conference games for Bemidji last year.
Yeah, not for last year. The year before, yes, they did upset St. Cloud State. And here's why I have hope, CJ, because it was Friday night 2 years ago in Bemidji that they did upset St. Cloud State. And then I went to the game on Saturday night in St. Cloud and they lost 4-1. So now this year, I'm very hopeful that means again, because I'm attending this game, that the Beavers will split the series again. Whatever game they win, fine by me. But I do think that I'm predicting a split again this weekend. I think St. Cloud State, they're going to be better probably than they were last year. It would be hard to be much worse. I mean, I say that, and they were like really – they were close to making the tournament coming down to like the final weekend of the season. So they didn't even play that badly. But I think given where they were around the holiday break when they beat the tar out of the Beavers, they would have expected better from their season. They kind of tapered off at the end, not to the extent that Duluth did, but they definitely had a disappointing end of their season. So I think we're catching them at a good time. turnover hasn't been a friend to them. I think they lost like half of their team over the last season. Beavers did not lose as many players as they did. So I think that, again, you're kind of looking at your experience. You're going to lean on your experience to carry you through these 2 non-conference games and get you, for whatever it's worth, whatever you believe that momentum is and what that's worth in sports. I do believe a little. I guess I don't believe so much in momentum on a game-to-game basis as I do believe in, like, in soccer, the big term is form. They say if a player or a team is in really good form, if they've won or drawn like their last 5 games, yeah, this player's in good form. Like, I believe that that's true, and that's a thing, and that's what helped the Beavers at the end of last season. You're just buzzing off of so many good results in a row that you're bound to play better. You're more loose out there, and if you're playing poorly, you're tense, you're stressed out because you need to get results towards the end of the season. So I think that if we can carry some good form into conference play coming up in a couple weeks, I believe they play Ferris State a few weeks from now to start conference play.
Yeah, the 25th and the 26th. Yeah.
So yeah, a little time off in between series, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, get a win, maybe 2 this weekend, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and the other thing is going to obviously be Matthias Scholl in the injury front and what the heck is going on with him.
True.
And that's going to be a big thing for this series. And it's tough in college sports because unlike the pros, they are not mandated to give out any of that information. So why would they? And maybe Robbins steps back in, and I mean, he played great in that third period. He played well enough to get Bemidji State across the finish line and finish off the road upset. And that's huge. How would he do 2 games in a row against St. Cloud State, going once on the road and then once at home in the home opener for the season? I don't know. That's the big thing. I don't know. Did they ever officially diagnose what his injury was, or did they just say lower body injury?
I don't know if they ever did or not. I don't believe they did. And I have really no estimate on a timetable. I think last year, Jared did a decent job of getting us some information on when he might be back, like with his injury. And then he did still surprise us. I think he came back like a week earlier than we thought or something against Bowling Green right before the holiday break there. But
and that was always tough too with Bemidji State a season ago, because they did struggle, but they struggled without Matthias Scholl in net. So it was like tough to gauge how bad it actually was, or if it's just you're missing your goalie and you're always going to struggle when you're out your number 1 goaltender, especially as good as Matthias Scholl is. And if he's out for a significant period of time again, no disrespect to Robbins, but we just don't know. Whereas Matthias Scholl is predicted to be the top goalie in the conference this year. It'd just be a huge blow if he's out for a significant period of time. That being said, if he misses this weekend, it's not ideal because you want to beat St. Cloud State. But as we talked about in our hockey preview show with Jared Arbedo of the Bemidji Pioneer, is, it doesn't really matter how good you do in conference or out of conference, because if you lose a conference game, your pairwise is going to tank anyways. So as good of a feather in the cap these wins are in St. Cloud State, and I want Bemidji State to win, and I think they have a really good chance to be competitive this weekend. If they lose them, it's not the end of the world. It's just more of a good in-state rivalry. You get to hang it over St. Cloud State's head for a whole year if you can even just split with them. But I think really it just comes down to Matthias Scholl in net doing if he misses this week and you have the bye week next week and he comes back against Ferris or something like that, or maybe you hold him off against Ferris because you think you still can beat him, and then you get him for Mankato at the beginning of the month, like maybe that's the goal. I don't know. We don't know. Like, this is all speculation, but it just comes down to that. Maybe he plays this weekend and it doesn't matter at all, but we just don't know what his status is going to be. Outside of goaltending, obviously Jutting with the goal, Ranclev fit right in. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how all these new pieces come together. Not that they're a completely new team from a year ago, but there is some decent movement, obviously, with no pole camp, and you lose some of your guys from last season in Leighton Road and Kyle Loft, and you just lose some of those guys. There is going to be that natural turnover. And in the first few weeks, how do they gel? We saw it with UMD. We kind of knew that they would be a ripe picking to get an upset there on the road because they have a lot of new guys and new spots and everything. So it'll be interesting to see kind of in week 2 how that progression goes with some of those new guys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. As the season progresses, that's going to be a big thing. And I do want to comment quickly on, like, just because the rest of the conference might have done like shitty outside of the conference, like, you still want to win your non conference games. That's just something we use to cope with, like, how bad we were out of conference last season. And yeah, it's true. It wouldn't have mattered, even if we beaten Duluth and swept, Wisconsin and Army and won a game in North Dakota. It wouldn't have mattered. We still would have been like, you know,
You
mid
still
to
would have
late
just missed the turn.
20s. Yeah, it wouldn't have helped us make a at large bid. But at the end of the day, a win is a win on the road, and I am very excited to see what this team can do. Special teams this weekend, you know, you're 0 for 1 on the power play, and you are 1 for 4 on the penalty kill, or sorry, 3 for 4. So you have a 75% penalty kill, which is not good, but you've only played one game. And if you give up a power play goal, you're not going to have 9 for 10 penalty kills. I hope you don't give up 10 penalties in one game. So, got to have a couple of games where you don't give up any power play goals to kind of bring that average back down. But I liked what I saw, at least from a, highlights perspective. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch this game. And yeah, now I won't have to use Fox 9 Plus to watch the St. Cloud game because I'll be in person, but I will be excited to see. I did not start my subscription to Midco Sports Plus yet, so I'm excited to start that this weekend and see what it's all about. I made a really stupid comment in the Discord this weekend because I think it was somebody brought up like, oh yeah, it looks really good, and so I went on CCHA Twitter feed and I looked at a clip from the Michigan versus Mankato game, and I'm like, oh yeah, it does look really good. I was like, oh shit, that's in Ann Arbor, so that's not even our video feed. That's Big Ten Plus. So maybe I'll go check out one from the Lake State game against Michigan State. That's in Sault Ste. Marie. So
Hey, you can get a Big Ten Plus subscription and watch Bemidji State women's hockey.
Yeah, you could. That's definitely an option. Speaking of women's hockey, if you want to make the transition over there, quick to
By the way, before we do that, this is Bemidji State's first win in Duluth for men's hockey since 2016.
Okay, so quite a while. Yeah, I knew that it had been a while, but you know what, CJ? That brings me good hope because I'll make my Chargers reference right here. I think I will. Yes, the Chargers have not won in Denver since 2016, so I think I like where this is going this weekend. I think I do.
Except the only difference is that Bemidji State didn't have to beat Trevor Siemian at quarterback.
Yeah, Trevor Siemian's better than anybody that Duluth has had playing on their hockey team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Bemidji State will be Bo leaving.
So yeah.
Anyway, women's hockey. They over the weekend they went to Robert Morris, and we said both teams put these games on the schedule for one reason, is because out of everything that they play, they're like, okay, cool. This is the weekend where we think we can compete with this team. And both sides were saying that. It's why they both put themselves on the schedule. Bemidji State went out to Moon Township, Pennsylvania, and they lost both games of the weekend, 0-2 on Friday night, and then they lost in overtime 3-4. Bit of a scrappy performance for them on Saturday. They got down, were able to come back, force overtime, and didn't quite come away with it. But look, this is a new look team, new head coach. You got to be patient. We thought they had a chance to win some games there, and it's disappointing that they didn't come away with them. But new head coach, new staff, new team, it's just patience.
It's October,
It's October.
Yeah.
They got a lot to figure out. And you know what? The thing that we've seen, especially in the 3-0 loss to Ohio State and the 3-4 loss in overtime to Robert Morris, they can get scrappy. They can, they have some, it's a very hockey term. They have some grit. They play tough in the board. They every kind of hockey cliche, they're starting to have that. And you kind of see it here and there. And they have St. Cloud State coming up this weekend at the Sanford Center. So, here's to hopefully a good weekend of Beaver hockey against the Huskies, because they play both in Bemidji, and Saturday's game will have a 2:00 puck drop, and then will be followed by the men's game. So that should be a fun day of hockey in Bemidji.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Hopefully going to be a good weekend. Like I said, it's October. I'm not going to be too bent out of shape. It's first year under Amber Fricklin. Let's give her a year. By the end of the year, let's see what we got coming down the stretch. It's January 31st, Mankato. It's Duluth, then St. Thomas. You got a little stretch there at the end of the year against teams that aren't Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio State. Now, granted, Duluth I think has been in the tournament a couple times over the last couple of years, so they're not necessarily like easy pickings for WCHA teams. Like we said, not many of them are. Even St. Cloud State last year when we played them was ranked in the top 15 at sometimes. But yeah, it's that's going to be more of the time that I'm judging this team and what progress they've been making towards getting better is, once you see the coach get in and implement some things and make some changes, perhaps that's more of when I'm going to want to see them start playing better. And we have seen it already. This is, it's not like they've been given up. Yeah. 2-8 isn't necessarily the best game, but hey, it's not like we've been losing anything 13-0 anymore. So we'll see. Maybe I say that and, down the stretch, the next couple of weeks we'll end up finding a way to do that. I hope not, but hopefully I haven't jinxed anything into existence yet for the women's hockey team.
Now you done it. You just did it. So congratulations. It froze, Ian, while you were making a face. So I
pray, dude. I've been in I apologize if anybody actually watches the video feed. I've been in 3 massively tight fantasy football games. So I've been watching Chris Olave get absolutely freaking skunked all evening for my fantasy team. But yeah, he just got a deep catch, and I think that it's coming back for a penalty on New Orleans. So we're perfect. We're perfectly fine. But anyways,
doing great. It's great. Anything else that we need to talk about Bemidji State related before we wrap up? Otherwise, Ian, I think we could just plug the Discord and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a busy time of year. Hockey's starting up. Sooner or later, we're gonna have basketball thrown in the mix. Still got fall sports to cover. So that's it's getting busy, and that's what we like. Fall sports, winter sports. This is the time of year to be a Beaver fan. So absolutely, let's keep it grinding. Hopefully hockey can get some more big wins.
Roll Beavs, baby. We'll see you next week.